I've never known shame until the moment my own grandson, with eyes as innocent as glass, disowned me with a smile. And I stood there frozen in aisle 7 while the cashier looked past me like I was a shadow that didn't count. He was 8, too young to know the magnitude of the words he spoke, but not too young to parrot what he heard. Not too young to absorb how his parents, my daughter and her husband, treated me like furniture that sometimes moved and made dinner. Earlier that day, I'd pressed my best blouse, the one with the tiny embroidered flowers along the collar. It still smelled faintly of lavender from last week's wash. I made sure my hair was neat, pinned tight at the back the way my husband used to love, God rest his soul. I put on light lipstick. The pink one Anna gave me 5 birthdays ago. The one she never noticed I still wore. They were out of town. Some business trip or couple's retreat. I didn't ask. They just left me a note on the fridge and a shopping list. Eggs, spinach, bread, peanut butter for Ben's sandwiches, and a reminder to try to make it quick. Ben had a piano lesson at 5. He was holding my hand when we entered the store. He always did, up until a few months ago. Now, he only did it when he was nervous, like when he couldn't find his favorite cereal or when a stranger smiled at him. I loved those moments. I took them as crumbs of affection. We walked aisle by aisle, my fingers gripping the list like it was a compass. He talked a lot. About school. About the dragon he drew in art. I nodded and listened with the kind of attention only someone who has lost most of her friends and her spouse can give. Then we reached the checkout. The cashier was a young woman, maybe in her 20s. Chewing gum, nails chipped, bored expression. She scanned the items slowly. "You and Grandma out shopping today?" she asked, a polite smile on her lips. Ben's fingers loosened from mine. He looked up at her, shrugged, and with a small, careless laugh said, "That's not Grandma. She's just the maid. Don't mind her." The words sliced clean. Not even anger found me then. Just something hollow. Like a cracked teacup that still sits upright, but will never hold tea again. The cashier blinked. Then, unsure, she looked at me. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. What was I supposed to say? Correct him? Scold him? He wasn't mine to scold anymore. Just to protect. And in that moment, I didn't know how. Ben was already counting the gum packets behind the counter, oblivious. Maybe he didn't know what he'd done, but someone had taught him that I wasn't family, that I was less. I paid, quietly, my hands shaking as I handed over the money I'd been saving from ironing Anna's work blouses. We stepped outside. The sun was too bright, too loud. It made my head hurt. "Grandma, can I get ice cream?" he asked, chipper, swinging the plastic bag like nothing happened. I looked at him then, really looked, and I realized that if I stayed silent, that phrase would become truth. Not because it was true, but because I hadn't undone it. "No," I said gently, voice tighter than I meant. "Not today." He pouted, and I wished I could explain to him what it feels like to be erased. When we got home, I set the groceries on the kitchen island and told Ben to wash up before dinner. He didn't argue. Maybe he saw something different in my face. Or maybe he just wanted to get back to his video games. I stood at the sink, my hands under cold water, scrubbing a tomato like it had wronged me. My reflection stared back at me from the window. A woman with thin shoulders, soft eyes, tired lines that held too many untold things. That night, when he was asleep, I took out a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were letters, photographs, my wedding band. I held it between my fingers, a circle of quiet promises. The next morning, I woke early, made breakfast, packed his lunch, but I left the grocery bag with the eggs and bread open on the counter so Anna could see it when she returned. I wanted her to see it. I needed her to ask. They got back that afternoon. Laughter floated through the hallway as they entered sunburnt, happy, the scent of perfume and travel clinging to them. Anna walked into the kitchen, paused at the sight of the half-unpacked groceries. "You went shopping?" "Yes," I said. "With Ben." She looked at me with raised eyebrows. "You should have waited. I was going to do it." He wanted cereal. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing more. I turned away and started washing the dishes I'd already washed twice. Ben came bouncing into the room. "Mom, can I show you my drawing from school?" "In a minute, honey." He lingered, then blurted out, "Oh, and the lady at the store thought Grandma was my grandma." But I told her. I turned around sharply. "Ben," I said. He froze. Anna frowned. Told her what? Ben's lips quivered a little. He looked between me and his mom. I said she was just the maid. Silence. A long one. The kind that splits a room in half. Anna looked at me. He said what? My hands were wet. I dried them slowly on a towel, forcing calm. That's what he said. I confirmed, voice even. And I didn't correct him. I didn't know how. Anna's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Ben, that's not okay, she snapped. Where did you even hear that? Ben shrugged, small shoulders rising like he wanted to disappear. From Dad, he said. The dinner table that night was unusually quiet. My son-in-law, Robert, didn't speak much. He cut his meat with extra precision, as if the silence between us could be sliced into manageable bites. Anna didn't let it go. You called my mother the maid in front of Ben? She asked, her voice flat. I didn't mean anything by it, he replied, glancing at me once but not meeting my eyes. He probably misunderstood. You know how kids are. No, I said, my voice shaking now not with fear, but the kind of grief that had waited too long. He didn't misunderstand. You said it. Maybe not to him directly, but he heard it, and now he believes it. Robert looked like he wanted to argue, but Anna turned on him. She cooked for you, took care of Ben when we couldn't. She has no pension, no savings. She gave it all to raise me now to help us. And you call her the maid? He looked uncomfortable, defensive. Well, she lives here for free. The air left the room. My chair scraped back. That's enough, I said. They all looked at me. I stood slowly. My knees weren't what they used to be, but tonight, they held me tall. You're right, I said to Robert. I do live here for free. I eat your food. I wash your son's clothes. I clean the bathrooms you all never notice. I do it quietly, because I love you. All of you. Even when you don't see me. Ben's eyes were wide now. Something in him shifted. But I'm not the maid, I said softly. I'm the one who held Anna through every fever. Who skipped meals to pay for her school books. Who buried her husband with only one hand to hold because she was too busy calming her daughter with the other. Anna was crying now. So was I quietly. I turned to Ben. And you, my sweet boy, you are never to call someone just anything. Not the maid. Not the janitor. Not the driver. People are never just anything. He nodded, slowly, tears filling the corners of his eyes. I kissed his forehead. Then I walked back to my room and closed the door, feeling more like a person than I had in years. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my chair by the window, the one facing the small backyard where the cherry tree I planted 20 years ago still stood. I used to push Anna on a swing tied to that branch, back when I was younger and the days didn't feel so heavy. The wind made the leaves rustle like whispers from the past. I watched them for hours. Somewhere deep in the house, I heard the low hum of a television, Robert's voice in the hallway, then Anna's sharper one rising and falling in frustration. They were arguing. About me, I was sure. I didn't want to be a burden. But when you're old, the line between being helpful and being in the way is razor thin. In the morning, Anna knocked gently on my door. I was already dressed. A simple skirt, white blouse, and the gray cardigan I always wore when I wanted to feel grounded. Can we talk? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. I nodded. She stepped in and sat on the edge of the bed like she used to when she was a teenager, heartbroken over some boy I never liked. I'm sorry, she said. I looked at her. Really looked. There were more lines on her face now. She was 38, but in that moment, I saw the 5-year-old again, the one who used to sneak into my bed when it thundered outside. You didn't say it, I said. He did. She sighed. But I let it happen. I let us become this. There were tears in her eyes. I reached over, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and smiled the way only a mother could. We all become something we don't recognize, if we're not careful, I said. She took my hand. I want to do better. I know. We sat like that for a while, two women from different chapters of the same life. Then she whispered, Do you want to leave here? I looked at her, startled. Why? Because if it were me, if my son treated me that way, I'd want to go. I let the question sit in the room. Did I want to leave? Where would I go? I thought about it all day, during laundry, while watering the houseplants, when Ben came home from school and avoided my eyes. He didn't speak to me much that evening. I didn't force it. Sometimes remorse needs silence to grow inside the heart. I've learned that from years of waiting for apologies that never came. His silence, though, wasn't cold, just uncertain, like a boy unsure if he still belonged in my love. After dinner, as I was folding towels in the hallway, Ben walked up to me. His feet shuffled. Grandma, he said, Can I talk to you? I nodded. He hesitated. I'm sorry I said that thing at the store. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I crouched down slowly, my knees protesting. My eyes met his. But you did hurt them, I said gently. He looked down. I thought it was just something Dad said. I didn't know it was wrong. Words have weight, I told him, even when we don't understand them. He sniffled. Will you forgive me? I pulled him close. There's nothing you can do that I won't forgive, I whispered. But I want you to remember something. He nodded against my shoulder. People remember how you made them feel. You made me feel small, even though I'm the one who helped you grow. His little arms tightened around me. I won't ever say that again, he promised. I believe you. And for the first time in days, my heart exhaled. The next week passed in soft waves. Robert was quieter around me. Not cruel, not cold, just distant. Like a man who didn't know how to mend something he didn't even know he'd broken. I didn't push. He wasn't raised to apologize. Many men of his generation weren't. Anna took more initiative. She started doing the dishes after dinner instead of letting them pile up in the sink. She offered to take Ben to school herself. Once, I even caught her reading quietly in the living room after work, something she hadn't done in years. Maybe she was remembering how to live. I found small joys in the shift. I wasn't invisible anymore, but I was still unsure. The idea of leaving haunted me now, not out of anger or pride, but out of clarity. My time here had always been temporary. A favor turned into a routine. A routine turned into a role. And then a label. The maid. One morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and my old notebook. The one with my writing. Not letters or grocery list reel writing. Short stories, pieces of my past, little essays about love, grief, aging. Anna walked in, saw the notebook, and froze. You're still writing? I never stopped, I said. She smiled, surprised. Can I read some? I hesitated. Those pages held my truth, my voice, parts of me I hadn't shared in decades. But I slid it across the table. Start from the beginning, I said. She opened it and began to read. For the next 30 minutes, the only sound was the turning of pages and the ticking of the wall clock. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wide. Mom, she whispered, this is beautiful. Tears welled in my eyes. No one had called me that in a long time. Beautiful. Why didn't you ever share this? I didn't think anyone would care, I said honestly. Well, I do. That evening, she asked if she could help me type some of them into the computer. You should submit these somewhere, she said, or at least print them for Ben to read someday. I laughed. Ben doesn't want to read about my memories. You'd be surprised, she said. He's still growing. Let's give him something good to grow from. And just like that, something changed between us. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She became my ally, my friend. By the end of the month, I made a decision. I sat them all down at the table one Sunday morning. Ben was eating toast. Robert was reading the paper. Anna was sipping coffee. I've been thinking, I began. Everyone looked up. I'm going to move out. Anna almost dropped her mug. What? Not immediately, but soon. I've looked into a small apartment, just a few blocks away. I'll still help when you need me, and I'd love to see Ben as often as I can. But I think it's time. Silence. Robert blinked. We never asked you to leave. I know, I said, but I need to choose something for myself. Before I forget how. Anna was already crying. Ben looked terrified. Are you mad at us? He asked. I shook my head. No, sweet boy. I'm just ready to be me again. I moved out 3 weeks later. The apartment was small but sunny. Just one bedroom, a cozy kitchen, and a window seat where I could write every morning. I filled it with books, framed pictures, and lavender soap. The place smelled like freedom. Anna visited every Sunday, sometimes with Ben, sometimes just her. Robert came once with a houseplant and a stiff apology. I accepted both. Ben and I started writing letters to each other. He called them secret notes. I kept them in a box under my bed. One day he wrote, Dear Grandma, I told my teacher about your stories, and she said you're a real author. I think so too. Love, Ben. That note meant more to me than anything. I never expected to find peace in a place so quiet. My new apartment sat above a bakery, and every morning at 6 a.m., the scent of fresh bread floated through the window. I would sit at the little round table in my kitchen, sipping tea, watching the world go on without needing anything from me. That was the difference. I was no longer needed, and it didn't feel like loss. It felt like air. On Tuesdays, I went to the community center to attend a writing group. A dozen of us, Mostly women, all older, sat in folding chairs and read from our journals. Some wrote poetry. Others just wrote memory stories about first loves, about war, about raising children, and then learning how to let them go. One woman named Judith wrote a piece about how her daughter hadn't called in 5 years. She read it with a smile, but I could see her hands tremble when she closed her notebook. Afterward, I held her hand, and we sat there together in silence. That was the thing about being old. You didn't always need to talk. You just needed to be understood. I read my story about the grocery store one week. I changed the names. I softened some edges. When I finished, no one spoke for a long time. Then Judith leaned forward and whispered, "That boy will remember what he said for the rest of his life. And because of your kindness, he'll be a better man." It was the first time I believed it. Anna called often. At first, every day, then every few days. It became a rhythm. "Mom, I miss you," she'd say, and it never stopped surprising me. Ben visited most weekends. We had a new ritual. He'd bring one of his drawings, and I'd give him a story in return. I started writing children's tales just for him. He especially loved the one about the old owl who remembered every sound in the forest, even the ones no one else heard anymore. "This owl is you," he once told me. "You remember things that matter." I hugged him so tight, I thought my heart would burst. One Friday afternoon, I got a call from Ben's school. His teacher, Miss Keating, wanted to invite me to their Family Generations Day. The kids would be presenting projects about their grandparents, and Ben had chosen me. "I hope this isn't last minute," she said warmly. "He talks about you quite a lot." I sat there, holding the phone, trying not to cry. "He does. All the time. Says you're a writer, and you're brave. He's very proud of you." I agreed to come, of course. I spent the entire weekend making sure I looked presentable. I wore my best scarf, polished my shoes, and printed out 3 of the short stories Ben liked most. I didn't know what to expect. A handshake? A small wave from the back of the classroom? But when I walked in, Ben ran across the room and wrapped his arms around me. "This is her," he said to his classmates. "This is my grandma. She's not the maid. She's the reason I want to write books." A silence settled over the class. I glanced up at Miss Keating, who gave me a soft nod. Ben pulled out his projecta poster board with photos, glued cutouts, and a title written in shaky, hopeful letters. "My grandma, the woman who taught me to see people." I don't remember the rest of the presentation, just the way his voice trembled slightly when he said, "She makes people feel seen, like they matter." Afterward, parents came up to shake my hand. One mother said, "I wish my kids had someone like you." I smiled and said thank you. But inside, I was thinking they do. You just have to look harder. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk and pulled out my old notebook, the one Anna had typed from. I flipped through the pages, past the pain, past the poems, past the invisible scars etched into careful sentences. I turned to a blank page, and I wrote, "When a child disowns you in a store full of strangers, it does something to your soul. But when that same child grows into someone who learns, apologizes, and loves better because of it, there's no wound deep enough to outweigh that healing." I put down the pen and closed the book. A few months later, I received a letter. Not an email, a real letter. Cream-colored envelope. Blue ink. It was from a literary journal. "Dear Mrs. Myers, thank you for submitting your short story, The Checkout Line. We are honored to inform you that your piece has been selected for publication in our fall issue. Your voice resonated deeply with our editorial board. It is rare to find such emotional clarity and grace. Warmest regards, Maya Lin, Editor-in-Chief." I must have read that letter a dozen times. My hands shook, not because of age this time, but because of possibility. The next time Anna came over, I showed it to her. She read it twice. Then she looked up at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You did it." "No," I said. "We did." The night after the story was published, Robert called me. Not Anna. Not Ben. Robert. I almost didn't answer. But I did. "Hi," he said. "Hi." There was a long pause. "I read your story," he said. "The one about the grocery store." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I've thought about that day a lot. More than you probably think. I didn't know how to say it back then. But I'm sorry. His voice cracked slightly on that last word. I closed my eyes. "Thank you," I said. He exhaled. "Ben keeps your story by his bed. He reads it when he's had a bad day." That, more than anything, made me forgive him fully. The years passed gently after that. I published 3 more stories. One even won a small award. I never cared for the prize. What I cared for were the letters strangers writing to say that my words reminded them of their own mothers or grandmothers or maids they should have treated better. Anna eventually started taking writing classes of her own. She said she wanted to tell her side of things someday. I told her I couldn't wait to read it. Ben grew up. Slowly, beautifully. He became the kind of boy who opened doors for strangers and wrote thank you notes without being asked. One day, when he was about 12, he said, "Grandma, I don't really remember the day at the grocery store. But I think that's a good thing, because I remember everything that came after." I smiled at him, kissed his forehead, and said, "Then that's what matters." Now I'm 81. I sit by the same window every morning. The cherry tree still blooms. The bakery still opens at 6. My fingers are slower, my handwriting shakier, but the words still come. And every time I write a new story, I think of that little boy in the grocery store. The one who almost forgot who I was. And the man he's becoming now, who never will. It was early spring when I moved into the little apartment by the bakery. The days were getting longer, and the blossoms on the cherry tree outside my window began to open slowly, like cautious hearts learning to trust the sun again. I kept busy, not because I needed to, but because after years of moving for others, I was learning how to move for myself. In the mornings, I wrote. I'd sit at my window seat with a pot of tea, a wool shawl over my shoulders, and the city waking up beneath me. I didn't need much, just my thoughts and the memory of a life lived full of quiet ache and soft triumphs. In the afternoons, I started volunteering at the library down the street. Every Wednesday was story time, and the librarian, Donna, let me read to the children. At first, I was nervous. My voice cracked on some words. My hands shook. But then I looked up and saw 10 tiny faces looking at me like I held magic in my throat. So I read louder. And something in me came alive. I read them stories I wrote myself. About an old woman who kept time in jam jars. About a boy who could hear stars humming in the dark. About a forgotten pair of shoes that missed the feet that once danced in them. After one session, a little girl named Lila hugged my leg and whispered, "You're the best grandma I've ever met." I smiled down at her. "You're the best story listener I've ever had." One Thursday afternoon, Anna showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was holding a thin manila folder. "Are you busy?" she asked. I smiled. "Not at all." She came in, set her purse down, and opened the folder carefully like it held glass. Inside were printed pages. Dozens of them. "I've been working on something," she said. "It's kind of a memoir. But really, it's about you. About us. About what I missed growing up." I reached out, touched the stack lightly. "I didn't know you were writing," I said. I didn't either. Until I had something to say. We spent the next 2 hours going through her chapters. Some were raw. Some were still rough around the edges. But all of them were real. One line stayed with me. "I used to think my mother disappeared when I became a mother myself. But now I know I just stopped looking." It broke me. And then it healed me. "I'm proud of you," I told her. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "You taught me how to be soft and strong at the same time. I just didn't know how to see it back then." I nodded. Sometimes we don't understand the people who raised us until we become them. That weekend, Ben stayed with me. He was older now, almost 13, taller, more thoughtful. His voice was changing, but his heart hadn't. At least not in the ways that mattered. We baked cookies together, made a mess of the kitchen, and laughed so hard my cheeks hurt. That night, while we were watching an old movie on my small TV, he turned to me and said, "Grandma, do you ever feel lonely here?" I paused, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I had too many. Sometimes, I admitted, but not the kind of lonely that hurts, just the kind that reminds me I've lived. He nodded slowly. "I don't want you to be lonely." I smiled. "I'm not. Not really. I have words. And memories. And you." He rested his head on my shoulder. "I remember that day at the grocery store," he whispered. "I know I said I didn't. But I do." My breath caught. "I didn't understand why it hurt you so much back then. But now I do." He looked up at me, his eyes soft. "I never thought you were less. I just thought. That was how grown-ups talked." I stroked his hair gently. "You were a child," I said. "You were learning. And what matters is that you kept learning." He nodded. "I'm going to write a story about you one day. I hope I'm the hero," I teased. He grinned. "You are." In the months that followed, I kept writing. I submitted my stories to small journals, and to my surprise, people started responding. One piece got picked up by a blog with thousands of readers. Another was turned into a short radio segment. I wasn't writing for fame. I was writing to remember, to reclaim, to remind people that even the ones you pass in grocery stores, the ones holding lists and plastic bags and quiet grief, have stories. Deep ones, long ones, ones that shaped the world and kept it spinning when no one was watching. One day, I got a letter from a woman in Minnesota. She wrote, "I read your story, the checkout line, while sitting beside my mother in the hospital. We hadn't spoken in years. But after I finished your piece, I reached over and held her hand. I didn't say anything. I just held it. That story brought me back to her. Thank you." I cried for a long time after that, because it reminded me that pain, when spoken honestly, becomes a bridge, and bridges can save lives. In early May, Ben asked if I would speak at his school. "About what?" I asked. "About your stories," he said, "and your life. They're doing this thing called living histories. The teachers want students to invite someone who's lived through something important." I laughed softly. "I'm not sure I qualify." "You do," he said. "You lived through being forgotten. And then you forgave." So I went. I stood in front of 20 middle schoolers with awkward arms and oversized backpacks. I told them about growing up in a house with 4 sisters. About falling in love with a man who taught me how to waltz in the kitchen. About losing him. About raising a daughter while working 2 jobs. About becoming invisible. And then learning how to be seen again, by writing, by forgiving, by loving harder even when it hurt. One girl raised her hand and asked, "How do you forgive someone who never says sorry?" I paused. "You forgive for yourself," I said, "so you don't carry their mistake inside you forever." Another boy asked, "Were you angry when your grandson said what he did?" "Yes," I said honestly, "but not at him. At the world that made him think I was less." The room went still. Ben sat in the front row, his eyes shining with something between pride and sorrow. I smiled at him, and I knew we were writing a new story now. Together. That summer, Anna convinced me to self-publish a small book of stories. We called it In the Quiet Things. She did the cover design. Ben drew the owl from one of my tales and signed it with his initials in the corner. We printed 300 copies. They sold out in 2 weeks. More importantly, I got emails. Dozens. From strangers who said they saw their mothers, grandmothers, neighbors in my pages. Some asked to translate the stories. Others asked if I'd do readings in their towns. "I think you started something," Anna said one evening over dinner. "I think I remembered who I was," I replied. Then, one quiet evening in August, I received a package in the mail. It was from the same grocery store, the one where it all began. Inside was a letter from the manager. "A customer sent us your story. We were moved beyond words. We've decided to start a new initiative in our chain. Every person has a story to train our staff in respect, dignity, and compassion, regardless of appearance or perceived roles." Your words sparked that. Thank you. And enclosed was a framed photo. It was of a new sign hanging near the checkout lanes. It read, "You are more than what people assume. You matter here." I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time. Sometimes, justice doesn't come in the way you expect. Sometimes, it comes quietly, like the soft steps of a child who's finally learned how to see.